Okay, so it seems like the participants have um, kind of slowed down. So we're gonna go ahead and get started. Can you guys let me know if you guys are able to hear me okay?
Yes, we can hear you, Linda.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so hello and good morning. I want to welcome you all to the monthly HMIS training webinar. This month, we will be focusing on HMIS Part 2. So let's go ahead and get started. So this is the agenda for today. I want to give you a brief overview of some of the things that we will be going over in the training. First off, we will be going over the introduction and policies associated with the HMIS Part 2 training. And then we will go in on how to do an intake and then also enroll a client to HMIS. From there, we will be creating and managing household members for the client that we created. And then we will go over how to create and manage services and provide updates to client records. And then finally, we will exit our clients from the program and run an example report. And I do ask that we hold questions until the end of each section or until the end of the webinar. So first off, we will introduce and discuss the policies associated with part 2. So what is part 2? HMIS part 2 training covers the data entry process and then also the different functionalities of Clarity, which is a software that we use for HMIS. So when you work with real client data, there are some requirements that your computer must have in order to access Clarity. Some of the things are that your computer must be password protected at all times. It must be locked out after 10 minutes of inactivity. Login credentials cannot be displayed in a public area, meaning that your username and your password should not be written on a post-it note and stuck on your desk for anyone to see. And then please keep in mind that Clarity is only compatible with the following web browsers, which is Edge, Chrome, Safari, and Firefox. Now, Clarity has an updated function that will display a pop up warning. So, if you are using a browser that is not compatible with Clarity, you will get that pop up. So, please update your browser if you do. Do we have any questions?
No questions so far.
Okay, thank you. Oh, so next we will be going over on how to do an intake and managing enrollments. So first, when you log into HMIS, you'll be on the search page with a search bar. You'll be able to search for clients by their first name, last name, social security number, or their date of birth. You don't have to search up the full name. You can simply search up the first 2 letters of the first name and the first letters of the last name. This is also helpful sometimes because clients might be spelled differently. So, such as Britney Spears or Britney Spears. So looking up the first 2 letters of her first name and also her last name will help to research searches to include all profiles with the first couple letters. So it's better to distinguish duplicate profiles. So before you can create a new client record, you should search by any of these identifying pieces of information to make sure that the client does not already have a record in HMS. So, in cases where a client already has a record, you do not need to create a new one. You will want to check the client's date of birth, social security number, and also the spelling of their name to make sure that you have identified the correct client. So if you are able to confirm the accuracy of the information with your client, then you will use the existing profile to enter them into your agency's project, which we will cover in a few minutes. If the client informs you that their demographic information in HMIS is incorrect, make sure to update the client's profile before you enroll them into your project. So in the case that you do find a duplicate profile, um, duplicate meaning the same name, social security number, or date of birth, please submit a ticket to the help desk with a unique ID of each profile to have the profiles merged. So our training example client, Peter Griffin, does not have a profile in HMIS. So let's create a new profile for him. So after you click the add button, you'll be taken to the client profile creation page. You will then have to fill out each field on this page and then hit the save button at the bottom of the page to save your client's record. The profile page asks you to enter your client's name, date of birth, social security number, if the client has provided you with that information. Clarity now has a function that if you spell a client's name in all caps or all lowercase, it will automatically correct the name to capitalize the first letter and also to capitalize the um, first letter of the last name as well, and lowercase all the remaining letters. If you do not have the client's name, date of birth, or social security number, you may leave it blank. And then answer the quality of name field um, according to the reason why the information is missing. So the quality question gives you three options as to client doesn't know. You can use this when the client does not know their name, date of birth, or social security, or if they refuse or the data is not collected. So if you do not have the social security number for the client, you may enter it as zeros all across and select the appropriate data quality option. So as you can see on the right, the bottom of the screen, you will need to add a release of information. You can do this on the right hand side of the screen, of the enrollment screen as well. So you must upload a release of information from the client. This is a document that the client usually signs during intake. When a client signs off on this, you're allowing your agency to share information in HMIS. So if they sign off on the ROI, then please select yes for the permission field. It will then ask you to enter the start date. This is the date that the client signed the ROI. So the start date defaults to today's date, but you can just match it to the date that the client signed the form. And the end date for the ROI typically expires in 7 years. This field will automatically populate, so you do not have to touch this field. Then it would ask you the type of documentation. So this is asking you to identify how the ROI is being stored. And it could be stored by electronic signature, an attached PDF. And then we also have a verbal consent. Due to the current circumstances, we are allowing agencies to enter clients with a verbal consent. But we will be tracking these clients so that we would actually get a signature from them once things are back to normal. And then we have household option. This is used for a minors page. So you do not have to attach any additional documents to the record. And then as you can see, when you select no for the permission, all the other fields disappear. And this is when the client does not consent to share their information in the HMIS. Do we have any questions?
No questions so far.
Okay, thank you. So next we're going to go over how to create and manage households. So what is a household? A household is a single individual or a group of people who are enrolling into a project together. So in an HMIS, there are two household configurations. Um, So there are two household configurations. There is the global household, which is connected to the client's profile. And there's also a program household, which is connected to the client's enrollment. So before enrolling clients into a project, you'll need to make sure that the client's global household accurately reflects the client's current household composition. So this is Peter. He is our head of household. So Peter has a son named Stewie that we would like to add to his household. So if you're following along, we have created a client profile for Peter already. So please do the same for Stewie. So now that Stewie has a client profile set up, we will be able to link Stewie to Peter's profile. So you would have to go on the head of households page. In this case, it would be Peter's, and then you go to the household members section and then click manage. Then it will take you to the household management screen where you will be able to search for Stewie and add him using the add button next to his name. So there are some times where instead of an add button, there would be a join button. So this means that the client is already another household. We will go over on what to do when that situation occurs in a few minutes. But for this one, we'll click add. So once you click add, this pop-up box will appear asking for the member type. In this case, it would be his son, and the pop-up will also ask for the date the client enters the household. So we would like to add another member to the household, which is Brian. Since we already went over on how to create a new profile and also on how to add a client to the household, please do the same for Brian. So earlier, I had mentioned that a join button would appear instead of an add button. So that means that the client is already a member of another household. So you would be able to do one of two things. The first option is have the client that you're on leave their household and join a new household. In this case, it would be asking us if we want Peter to leave his household and join Homer Simpson. If you click on this one, it will ask you for the date of when Peter left his household. Since Peter is the head of household, it is asking us if we would like to add another household in his place. Then it would ask you what kind of relationship he has to the head of households that he will be joining, and also the start date for when he is part of the new household. The second option that you have is have the client, the one that you looked up, in this case would be Homer, leave their household and join a new one. So Homer will leave his household and join Peter's. If they're not the head of household that they're leaving, you would only need to identify the relationship to the household that the new client is joining. So in this case, we'll say that Homer is Peter's cousin. But since this scenario is not part of the case, we will move forward with our Griffin household. So now I'm going to show you how to exit a client from the global household. For this example, we will exit Brian. So to do this, you go to the household members section, click on the manage button. Then we are going to search for Brian's name, and then click on the edit icon next to his name. So then you would have to fill out these fields on the pop-up box as seen on the screen. The member type, head of household, and join date should auto-populate for you. Just be sure to click on the toggle for the exited household button, and then also include the date in which the client has exited. And then click save. So this is what your current household should look like. Do we have any questions?
You're good. No questions so far.
Okay. So now that we've got Peter's global household set up correctly, we want to enroll Peter's household into a project. In this case, we will be using the Springfield Homeless Shelter. So first you go to the head of households profile and then click on the programs tab. So under the programs available section, you'll be able to click on the drop down arrow for the Springfield Homeless Shelter. So once you're in the drop down menu, you'll be able to see the details of the project. And then enroll Peter as well as Stewie into the project. Just make sure that the toggle next to Stewie's name is selected and then hit enroll. So after you click enroll, this is a screen that you would be directed to. You will need to complete this information for each member of the family that you are enrolling into the project. There are some key points that I want to cover because these data elements need to have some extra attention paid to them because they have effects on numerous HMIS reports. So the first one would be the project start date. The project start date is when did the client begin working with the project? And this can vary depending on project type. There are certain parameters that need to be met. So please be sure that you understand what they are so you can determine when the project date occurred. Next is the prior living situation. This information is used to help determine if the household is chronically homeless. So please be sure to gather these details carefully. Next is the type of residence. Where was the client before the project start? We also have the length of stay. How long did the client start staying in that place? The next, we have approximate date of homelessness started. How long has the client been in a literal homeless situation? Number of times on the streets, in emergency shelters, safe haven, or in the past 3 years. So how many times has the client been in a literal homeless situation in the past 3 years? And then we also have the total number of months homelessness on the street, in emergency shelters, safe haven in the past 3 years. So how many cumulative months has the client been in literal homeless situation in the past 3 years? So next we have a disabling condition. Does the client have a disabling condition? This is used to determine a client's chronic homelessness status. So it is important that the client does that if the client does have a disabling condition that you select yes. And yes for the type of disability that they have, whether it be long-term or not. So if you select yes for physical, chronic, or mental, it would ask you to specify whether the condition is long term. Next, we have income. So if you select yes for any of these fields, you will need to identify where the income is coming from. Next would be non-cash benefits. If you select yes, you would also need to identify which non-cash benefits, and then also the same for health insurance. So there are a list of OC custom questions that have been added to the enrollment form as part of the 2020 data standards update. These questions are pretty straightforward as it asks what city were you immediately prior to project entry. What state were you born in, what country, employment status, and if you were affiliated with any federally recognized tribe. And if you're not, then you can skip this question. So do we have any questions?
No questions for that section.
Okay. So next we're going to go on to services and updates. So next we will add services to the project that Peter is enrolled in. Services can be required by different funding sources and also program requirements. So please make sure to confirm with your agency administrators when and how services should be applied to each of your projects. So we want to be on a Peter's profile for this. You go to the programs tab, select the edit icon next to the project that we would like to add services to, in this case, the Springfield Homeless Shelter. So from there, you will click on the Provide Services tab and then select a service from the list of services. For this training, we will use the bus pass under transportation. So from there, you would be directed to the screen where you would add the start and end date of the service. You will be able to add in group members if necessary, and also include a note for the service that you provided. Once this is completed, you will click submit. So next we will create services attendance for Peter. Sometimes you have services that are offered to your clients every day, such as food or transportation. And it would take way too long for you to look up every client that has received that service and enter the service on how you would normally. So these services are provided on a daily basis or even multiple times per day. And they can be set up to track clients by attendance. So how you would do this is that you click on the launch pad on the upper right hand corner and select attendance. So you would select the service that you would create attendance for. In this training, we will use the food meal service. So first, you would select the date that you would like to add the service for. You can add the client in one of two ways. You can search for the client on the right-hand side of the page, or if the client has already been in attendance for the last 4 months, their name would show up under the clients from the last 4 months section. But since Peter is new, we will search up his name. Once you hit search, his name will appear and the add button will appear as well on right next to his name. So you click on the add button to create an attendance for Peter. And it should look a little something like this. And you will be able to do this as many times as you like. So now you want to go over on how to do housing notes. Housing notes should be used for information relating to housing the client. These notes will be shared with the COC in order to streamline the housing process for the client and to coordinate care among multiple agencies. So when entering housing notes, we follow the PRIP format, which is the purpose, intervention, response, and plan. So the purpose of the housing notes would be to identify the purpose of the session. Why was the session necessary? So an example would be that the client is currently receiving rental assistance and needs to continue making rental payments when the rental assistance ends. Next would be the intervention. What intervention did you provide in the session? What did you do to assist the client? So an example would be we identified benefits that the client might be eligible for, referred client to resources to assist with resume building. And the next one is the response. What is the response of the client to the intervention? Include outcome measures and documentation or progress towards the goals or objectives. So an example would be that the client agrees that she needs both benefits and income in order to maintain rental payments in the future. And then lastly, we have plan. What are the next steps determined by you and the client to achieve housing goals? So what actions, items were determined to help move towards that goal? So an example would be client will apply for the benefits identified by next Friday, and then she will also bring in a resume and also a draft in our meeting in 2 weeks. So this is what it would look like in the housing notes. And then you can find the entries of your housing notes in the histories tab. So the next thing I want to go over is how to add a client note on an agency level. When this is made public, it is available for all agencies to see. But when it is private, it is only available for your agency to see. So to do this, you will go on the profile page and click on the notes tab, and then you click on add note. And so you would enter in the title of the note, when the note was created, and enable time tracking if necessary, and of course a description for the note. I'm going to say that we collected paperwork for housing assistance, then click save. And then now we would add client notes on a project level. So similarly, when a note is made public, it is available for all agencies to see. When it is private, it is only available for your agency to see. So you would click on the Programs tab on the profile screen, select Edit button next to the Springfield Homeless Shelter, and then click on Add Note under the Notes tab. So that in the same way, you would add in the title of the note, when the note was created, enable time tracking if necessary, and of course the description. And I'm going to say that the client requested for transportation, and then go ahead and click save. So next we're going to go over case notes. This should be entered the same day that the incident or session related to the case note occurred. So case notes should be used to track information regarding the client's enrollment and should not be shared with the COC. And we suggest that recording the information as soon as possible makes it so that the information is more accurately collected. This should utilize as many facts as possible. It should avoid using diagnosing jargon, stereotypes, or prejudices. Avoid using emotionally charged words such as emotional, abnormal, dangerous, hysterical, threatening, uncooperative, etc. And the case notes should only contain relevant information that is important and is related directly to the client's well-being. So we're going to go over some examples of what is a good and bad case notes. So the first one would be, a bad example would be, I drove over to the workshop to see Chris, went into the building, saw her talking to a friend, walked up to her, and I needed to talk to her about her SSI check. There's just too much information that we really don't need. So instead of saying all that, we would just say that, I talked to Chris about her SSI check. Another example would be Derek was acting out. So to reword that, we would say that Derek skipped school and was caught shoplifting. And then another one would be Mrs. Jacobs seems very depressed. Instead of saying that, we would say that she stated, of course, I'm depressed. Wouldn't you be too if you were in my situation? And then next, I want to go over on how to set a public alert. There are times when it is necessary to notify your agency and several other agencies of a client situation or need. So for this, we would set a public alert. This will make it so that a notification will appear if you are on the client profile page, and it'll be visible to anyone looking at that record. So to do this, you will click on the Notes tab of the profile screen. And right under the client notes section, you will see a section for public alerts. And then you click add alert. So this in the same way you would enter in the title, when the alert was created, a description for the reason of the alert. So I'm just going to say that if Peter is searching up for his driver's license, he can pick it up at the OC training agency since he accidentally left it here. So if you select the private checkbox, the alert will be only visible to staff members in your agency. So if you do not select that, then it would be visible to anyone looking up the client record. And then you click save. When clients are in the project, we understand that certain things might change, such as income status or a client disability. For this, you would be able to add in a status assessment to the client record to capture these changes. This must be dated as a day the client information changes, and there is no limit as to how many times you can add a status assessment. So to do a status assessment, go to the profile and click on the programs and then click on assessments. Then you can click start. It will take you to this window where you select which client you would like to complete the assessment for. In this case, we will pretend that Peter got a job and also some Social Security benefits, and we will be completing a status assessment for him. So this will be really similar to the enrollment screen that we filled out earlier in the training. So the fields will automatically populate for you with what you inputted in during the enrollment process. So you will only need to make updates to the fields that you need. So let's say Peter is now working and we're going to do a status assessment to reflect his income. So I'm going to change my previous answer for his income from any source from no to yes. And then I will toggle over what applies to him, which is earned income. I'm going to do the same for SSDI, and I'm going to set both to 500. So another common status assessment that I would like to go over is when a minor who is enrolled in your project has turned 18. So you can add a status assessment and create an income to create income and sources for the minor who has turned 18. So if a minor child is contributing to household expenses, then the amount that they contributed will be added to the head of household's record. But when they turn 18 and they continue to contribute the same amounts, you will create a status assessment. And for the income from any sources field, you would select no to show that the client is not contributing any additional income. Unless the client who has turned 18, unless they will be contributing more income, then you would add the additional amount that they are contributing. So this is because if you take away from the head of household and move the entire amount to the new adult record, it would look as if the head of household has lost income. But in reality, it was just moved into another record. The next thing that we would like to go over is the annual assessment. You would add an annual assessment for an individual if they have been active in your project for 1 year. So you would be able to add the annual assessment 30 days or after their 1 year, 30 days before or after their 1 year anniversary of their project start date. So if the client started on January 1st, 2020. You can add the assessment as early as December 2nd, 2020, but no later than January 31st, 2021. And you would access the status annual assessment the same way that you would access the status assessment. So when you're dealing with a family, also known as a group enrollment, then the annual assessment is based on the head of household's anniversary date. So for example, if Peter has a start date of January 1st, and he is active as of December 2nd, then he will need the annual assessment like we described. So, but let's say that Stewie did not enter the project until November. So he would still need to get an annual assessment by January 31st, 2021, because that is when Peter is getting his. Do we have any questions so far?
No questions for this section.
Okay, so next we will exit a client from the project. So when the client is no longer in need of your project services, you will need to exit them from the project. You need to edit the enrollment for the head of household in the project that they are exiting. So you need to go to the programs tab, click on the edit icon next to the project that you wish to exit the client from, which is the Springfield Homeless Shelter. And then you will select the exit button on the right-hand side. So then it would ask you to select names of the client in the household that you would like to exit. You would then have to answer exit questions for the clients that you have selected. So one of the required questions is a destination on where the client is going. In this case, I would say that Peter is renting with no ongoing subsidy. Destinations should match the housing situations that the client will be staying on the night that they leave your project. And if you have any services that are open, you'll be given a chance to close out those services. So enter the date that of which the client has exited and save and close the record. Any questions?
No questions for this section.
Okay. So lastly, I would like to go over on how to run a report. So to access the HMIS reports, go to the Launchpad, click on Reports to access a list of HMIS reports. So it will take you to this page, and you can see that it's divided up into 3 sections, which is the report library, explore, and data analysis. The report library contains canned reports. These are reports that are made so that you only need to adjust a few filters, such as date range, report name, etc. The Explore tab will give you a chance to play with Looker and create custom reports that pertain to your agency. And then also for data analysis, this is a library report that will contain any custom reports that we have created specifically for your agency. But for this training, we will use on the we will be focusing on using the CAN reports under the program-based reports. So the client-based report lists program state information for clients with the selected status in the selected programs. So today we were going to be using the program roster report. You can click run, or if you would like to schedule a report on the specific days, you can click on the schedule report icon, which will give you a date range that you would want the report to be run on. So you would choose your program. In this case, it would be the Springfield Homeless Shelter. And it gives you 3 options for the status. You can either do active in report date range, meaning that the client project stay is active at least 1 day within the report date range, or it would be enrolled within the report date range, meaning the client's enrollment date is within the selected report date range, or the exited within report date range, meaning that the client's exit date is within the report date range. So for this training, we'll use active within report date range. I'm going to do 10/1 to 10/31 since that was when we enrolled our client to our project. And the output gives us 3 options. It includes a web page, PDF, or an Excel. A web page is a functional format that will allow you to click on errors found in the report and be taken to the client record containing that error. PDF would be a good option if you need an official reports, grants, or files saved for your records. And then also in Excel, if you download the Excel file, you'll be able to use Excel to manipulate and organize the data to your liking. But for this report, we will select a web page and then click submit. So you will see that it's in the queue. We will give it a moment to open up. And then once it is ready, you will have another notification, and then you'll be able to open it from there. And then it should look a little something like this. So I do want to quickly remind that we implemented a HMIS Part 2 task list for users to complete as part of the new onboarding process and also the recertification process. So you can use this link on the slide here to access the task list, or you can search up skills tests on our knowledge base. So the task list will be testing your skills on everything that we've covered today and the HMIS Part 2 training. If you need to do that for a new onboarding process or recertification process, please complete the Part 2 training. And then once that has been finished, you would need to submit an HMIS account update and testing form to reflect the results of the HMIS 2-part list. So that will conclude our training for today. Thank you so much for joining us. If you have any questions, please leave them in the chat box or check out our knowledge base for articles on step-by-step instructions on everything that we covered today. So we will be sending a wrap-up email to all of you with some resources and also a survey to let us know if this webinar was helpful or not and how we can improve for future webinars. So thank you and have a great rest of your day.
And everyone, if you didn't get a chance to yet, please put your name and agency in the chat so we have a record of all those who participated. Thank you.